My name is Michaela Miller with the Friday edition of the Our City COVID-19 News Show. We will be updating you on the latest information and resources around the COVID-19 pandemic while unpacking deeper issues as they emerge. Professor Salim Abdul Karim, Chief Advisor to the government on COVID-19, revealed this week that this was likely him and his team of more than 40 experts would advise that the current lockdown be extended if the infection rate had not declined to a targeted level. On Thursday, Cabinet Ministers announced a few lockdown amendments. We will be sharing these with you later in the show. We encourage our viewers to get in touch with us. We want to hear from you as we welcome contributions from movements, healthcare providers, and our audience. We want this program to be a two-way flow of information, so please get in touch with us via our social media platforms and our email. And now for the news. As we enter day 22 of the national lockdown, the current number of confirmed COVID-19 cases stands at 2,605 with 903 recoveries and 48 deaths. An e-health specialist from Doctors Without Borders, who was part of a team of provincial health workers, was mugged at gunpoint during COVID-19 testing in Khayelitsha Site C earlier this week. Health Department spokesperson from the Khayelitsha and Eastern Substructure, Sitembiso Magubane, said police had since been asked to safeguard health workers conducting tests in communities. Head of the Provincial Health Department, Keith Kluter, condemned the incident, saying crews would only enter communities if the police or law enforcement officials were available to accompany them. Athlone police are calling for help locating those involved in the murder of a Q-Town man after his body was discovered along Klipfontein Road near a bus stop earlier this week. The Daily Voice reported a resident who asked not to be named, saying it was believed that the man was walking home from work when he was allegedly attacked and robbed. Police spokesperson Captain FC Van Wyk said the victim was found dead on the pavement with head injuries. A murder case has been opened. Transport Minister Fikile Mbalula has released the Easter weekend road statistics. Mbalula said there was a 70% decrease in the number of vehicles on the road during Easter, resulting in an 82% drop in deaths. There were 3 fatalities in the Western Cape, a number which was included in the nationwide fatality toll of 28 people. 719 arrests were made for the road violations, with traffic police manning 480 roadblocks.
The number of vehicles dropped significantly over Easter period as the majority of people stayed at home in compliance with the lockdown regulations. A reduction in traffic volumes also had a corresponding effect on the number of traffic violations. The number of drivers arrested for drunken driving was 11, while the number of drivers caught speeding stood at 1. This is in sharp contrast with 807 arrested for drunken driving and 192 for speeding in 192. However, any attempt to compare year-on-year figures will be an exercise in futility, as the material conditions this Easter are fundamentally different from a normal period where traffic is able to move freely. The total number of arrests for violation of road traffic laws stood at 719, while traffic law enforcement authorities meant 480 roadblocks. A total of 104,140 vehicles were stopped and checked at these roadblocks. The number of vehicles impounded was 236, with 171 vehicles discontinued due to unroadworthiness. Over the same period in 2019, the number of arrests for violation of road traffic laws was 1,343, with 141 roadblocks. The number of vehicles impounded was 1,555, while vehicles discontinued for unroadworthiness stood at 702. In addition to enforcing road traffic laws, authorities had to enforce the lockdown regulations and directions. As a consequence, 184 vehicles were stopped and ordered to return home for traveling in contravention of the lockdown regulations and directions. As at the end of the Easter weekend, 26 fatal crashes were recorded, which resulted in 28 fatalities. Most ensure that no school allows children to be transported in unroadworthy vehicles.
It's now time for an ad break, but after this, we'll be back shortly. You're still watching our City COVID-19 show with me, Michaela Miller. We will be giving you the latest updates on the COVID-19 pandemic and sharing essential resources and information with you. Minister of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs, Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, has announced changes to the lockdown regulations affecting transportations, funerals and the movement of children. Dlamini Zuma said changes were necessitated by the extension of the lockdown announced by President Cyril Ramaphosa, which ends on the 13th of April.
That we are using today, but because the lockdown has been extended, we are extending those regulations. We will announce a few amendments to those regulations, and that's what we are going to talk about now. But I also want to explain that when we do stop the lockdown, we cannot do it abruptly. That today it's complete lockdown, tomorrow it's open completely. So we have to phase in so that there is an orderly move towards what would be a normality. But also to explain that there are measures that will remain beyond the lockdown. Because if you recall, there were measures that were in place even before the lockdown. So it doesn't mean that after the lockdown, everything will go back to normal. There will be measures that will remain beyond the lockdown. But for today, we'll just explain some of the changes that we're making in the regulations that are now being extended. I'll start with the issues of transport. In the amendments, we are stressing the issue of the prohibition of transportation of liquor. The only alcohol that is allowed to be transported is the one that is used for commercial purposes, for our sanitizers and the related issues. But liquor that we drink is not allowed to be exported in the same way that it's not allowed to be sold. So that's what we're adding, and we are saying at the ports, before we were saying that all goods that come from high-risk areas must be sanitized. But this time, because we've been learning about this disease, we've now learned that actually if the goods have been at sea for many days, the virus will not survive. So there is no need at the ports for the goods that have been at sea for a long time to be sanitized, because the virus would have died. The other issue is that as we get ready for lifting the lockdown in an orderly, incremental manner, we have agreed that we must start decongesting the ports. So items that are already at the ports for export must start being exported, so that as the lockdown is eased and companies start manufacturing and exporting, they don't find a port that is completely congested with goods that were there before. So that is being amended. And then we come to the issue of funerals. Those regulations are still the same. You need a death certificate or a copy of a death certificate, and you go to the magistrate's court or to the police station to get permission to travel to another province. And of course, those who bury quickly, who may not have sufficient time to wait for the death certificate before they start their journey, we allow them to use affidavits, to go and do an affidavit to say they are going to a funeral, and then they will go to the funeral. And when you go to the funeral,
Defense Minister Nosiviwe Mabisa Nkakula, responding to the death of an Alexandra man allegedly assaulted by the soldiers, said the South African National Defence Force had hung their heads in shame over the incidents. She added that the military police and the military ombudsman were investigating the circumstances that led to his death.
Picked up that yesterday the chaplain general, together with some of the few soldiers who were around the area, we actually requested them to visit the family home and to pass condolences on behalf of the South African government and to reassure the family that there is investigation which is currently going on. The investigation is conducted by the South African Police Services, by the military police, and also the military ombuds office. We are therefore unable to comment at this point about what the next course of action is going to be, but just to say to South Africans, we are saddened by what happened. We regret that which happened. We do not know exactly what the circumstances were which led to such, but that investigation, which is currently underway, will soon provide us with more information, and therefore we will be able to determine what steps to take at that point. But it's equally important for us to keep in mind that in such cases, obviously the law will take its course. And yes, as we have said before, our appeal is that our people should stay indoors. People should remain at home. People should not venture out to check what soldiers, what the police, and what the metros are doing by going out into the streets just for, to check what is it that they are doing, or even to provoke them. Security services are not there because there's a fight which is currently going on, or there's instability in the country. Security forces are all over the place, deployed everywhere in this country, because there is a pandemic which is currently gripping not just South Africa, but the world. And therefore, whatever steps we are taking, we're not taking these measures because we are a mean government. because we are being insensitive. We've taken these decisions because it has become necessary for us to do so. So I do want to really make a special appeal to young people that you have nothing to lose but your life. If you go out, you do it at your own peril. And when you do so, remember, you're going to come back with infection, and you are going to infect all of the people who live in that house with you.
Speaking at a press conference to announce new amendments to the government's emergency regulations, ministers were at pains to emphasize that it would not be business as usual after the lockdown was lifted.
It was a sharp lockdown to contain the spread of the virus, followed by a gradual expansion of products and services that were added to limit the negative impact that communities were facing. Members of the media will recall that first list were things like food, cleaning and hygiene products, medical supplies, fuel, and basic goods like airtime and electricity. In the 3-week period since then, we've seen additional categories added, like baby care products, like international call centers that render critical services outside of South Africa, like company payroll systems so that the HR function can ensure that wages and salaries are processed in this period. And today, as my colleague has indicated, a number of additional areas will be added through the gazetting process. They include artisanal trades for emergency repair work, stores selling hardware and components for emergency repair work, vehicle repairs for people who are involved in essential services, call centers of retailers providing short-term insurance policy cover, and ICT, that's information and communication technology services rendered to entities and institutions. Now, what we will be looking at is, out of the range of activities, which ones should gradually be reintroduced over the period ahead. And so at this stage, until we are able to make those decisions based on health considerations, economic considerations, security considerations, it is not possible publicly to comment on those and indicate where we are with the review. But that whole range of activities in goods, in services are being looked at. And as the President indicated in the address to the nation, we're looking at a risk-adjusted approach to the period ahead, where the lockdown is enforced based on a risk adjustment and the information we get from both the medical professionals as well as the security information that we get. So I hope it deals not only with the issue of online services, but more broadly with the process by which we are looking at adding additional services and activities over a period through this gradual step-by-step arrangement. We're seeking to avoid a sudden, significant rush of people back to work at the end of the lockdown, and we're also seeking to be influenced by the health data and the work of scientists and professionals that are advising us on this issue. So I hope that covers not only that category, but also other categories that the public have raised with us, that we are certainly looking at all of the categories and will be making announcements as we conclude a review.
The National Employers Association of South Africa fears that landlords and tenants within the retail sector will not be able to cope with the lockdown extension. The organization conducted a survey among their members in retail and said it had become clear that the majority of commercial landlords were not granting rental relief to their tenants. The association represents 10,000 businesses across South Africa. We spoke to the Chief Executive, Gerard Pappenfus, and this is what he had to say.
NIASA is in existence for 25 years. I established the organization in 1996. Uh, we pride ourselves that we are championing the cause of the employer. And we focus on labor law and everything that's happening in the workplace. But, we go beyond that and also assist businesses, especially in the current situation where business find itself in an extremely difficult situation. And what is happening impacts on all areas of business. So we are involving ourselves, and that's why we are also looking at business in this particular situation. We're dealing about tenants and their dealings with landlords. But we must understand we represent business. We also represent landlords. And, any demand on the tenants is this stage is very hard on them. There's no income. Only 10% of tenants, and hundreds participated in the survey, and only 10% can pay their rent in full. The others can't pay it either, not at all, or only a portion of that. This morning I read an article where the employers and tenants in the clothing industry offer to their landlords 10% or nothing. That's what they can do. So that illustrates how severe the situation is. But I think it's early days, and I think the thing will play out in the days and weeks and months to come. Well, it is having a tremendous impact, with the exception of the small number of businesses that qualify as essential services. The rest has closed their doors. So there's no feed, there's absolutely no income, but the overheads remain. But one must remember that when the lockdown is lifted, whenever that's going to happen, if we're fortunate, end of the month, I'm not so sure if that will be the case. We must remember that the economy will start up very, 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 very slowly. The Minister of Finance yesterday said that South Africa will find itself and is already in a very deep recession. So, employers must act wisely with their money at this stage, because it's not only this month, but it's the months that's beyond this period where employees will return to work. So this is going to have a huge impact, not now, but also after the lockdown. There's no money now, and money will come in very slowly after the lockdown. I think we must understand, when we entered COVID-19, the economy was already in a recession. And we know, for many reasons, which I'm not going to discuss now, the government's, the fiscal coffers are quite empty. So I think government has done what they could. And, the interest rates are again reduced. So I think government's doing what they can. What is, however, a question now is how this is going to happen in practice. It's one thing to set aside a fund for a particular reason. The second part is how business access that fund and to what extent it's paid out timelessly. If I'm looking at the unemployment insurance fund, that's one thing. There's money available. How it is playing out in practice, that's a different question. And I think that will take months for the money to change and from the UIF to the employers or to the employees. That's where the problem lies. Making money available and actually getting money in the hands of the relevant parties, that's got completely, entirely different story.
We are taking a short break, and when we come back, Octavian Glovo will update us on the latest fake news and social media.
Welcome. Before the ad break, we had Michaela Miller with the latest news. Acting Minister of Communication Jackson Tembu said government would step up its campaign against fake news relating to COVID-19 and the national lockdown. A high-tech monitoring and evaluation process has been put in place to access compliance and reports from media and the public. It is able to take down fake news items from various platforms and submit cases to SAPS for investigation and prosecution. In the following PSA, United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres has spoken about the effect of the COVID-19 pandemic on children across the world.
As the COVID-19 pandemic spreads across the globe, we are seeing an alarming pattern. The poorest and most vulnerable members of society are being hardest hit both by the pandemic and the response. I am especially concerned about the well-being of the world's children. Thankfully, children have so far been largely spared from the most severe symptoms of the disease, but their lives are being totally upended. I appeal to families everywhere and leaders at all levels: protect our children. Today, we are launching a report that highlights the risks they face. First, education. Almost all students are now out of school. Some schools are offering distance learning, but this is not available to all. Children in countries with slow and expensive internet services are severely disadvantaged. Second, food. A staggering 310 million school children, nearly half of the world's total, rely on school for a regular source of daily nutrition. Even before COVID-19, the world faced unacceptable rates of childhood malnutrition and stunting. Third, safety. With children out of school, their communities in lockdown and the global recession biting deeper, family stress levels are rising. Children are both victims and witnesses of domestic violence and abuse. With schools closed, an important early warning mechanism is missing. There is also a danger that girls will drop out of school, leading to an increase in teenage pregnancies. And we must not ignore the growing risks children are facing as they spend more time online. This can leave children vulnerable to online sexual exploitation and grooming. A lack of face-to-face contact with friends and partners may lead to heightened risk-taking, such as sending sexualized images, and increased and unstructured time online may expose children to potentially harmful and violent content, as well as greater risk of cyberbullying. Governments and parents all have a role in keeping children safe. Social media companies have a special responsibility to protect the vulnerable. Fourth, health. Reduced household income will force poor families to cut back on essential health and food expenditures, particularly affecting children, pregnant women, and breastfeeding mothers. Polio vaccination campaigns have been suspended. Measles immunization campaigns have stopped in at least 23 countries. And as health services become overwhelmed, sick children are less able to access care. With the global recession gathering pace, there could be hundreds of thousands additional child deaths in 2020. These are just some of the findings of the report we are issuing today. And its conclusion is clear. We must act now on each of these threats to our children. Leaders must do everything in their power to cushion the impact of the pandemic. What started as a public health emergency has snowballed into a formidable test for the global promise to leave no one behind. The report urges government and donors to prioritize education for all children. It recommends they provide economic assistance, including cash transfers, to low-income families and minimize disruptions to social and healthcare services for children. We must also prioritize the most vulnerable, children in conflict situations, child refugees and displaced persons, children living with disabilities. Finally, we must commit to building back better by using the recovery from COVID-19 to pursue a more sustainable and inclusive economy and society in line with the Sustainable Development Goals. With the pandemic placing so many of the world's children in jeopardy, I reiterate my urgent appeal. Let us protect our children and safeguard their well-being.
And now for social media. Share your thoughts with us on Facebook, we are Our City CT, and on Twitter at Our City CT. This is a time that we need to come together as a nation. These are the popular hashtags on Twitter today. Hashtag boycott online learning UJ. Some students are vocal against online learning, questioning how poor students could afford the data needed to learn this way. They are calling for educational system that favors rich and poor. Hashtag Smith. Former Princess Captain Smith has been appointed Director of Cricket South Africa. Smith played in a total of 117 tests, 197 one-day internationals, and 35 in T20 before retiring. If you want
to be part of this conversation, you can do so by visiting our Facebook page using the hashtag CTV Show. That's all we have on the social media feed. We'll be back with Michaela. Welcome back. You're still tuned into Our City, the COVID show with me, Michaela Miller. Before the ad break, Octavian Glover looked at what was the nation buzzing on social media platforms. For your latest news around the COVID-19 pandemic and to see what other Cape Townians are doing to keep safe. Speaking about what other Cape Townians are doing, here are some organizations helping communities stay safe. Athlone House of Strength, established in 2001, is a shelter for abused women and children. They also offer telephonic counseling. If you need assistance during the lockdown or would like to assist, contact 021 862 9983. Mosaic offers counseling and legal aid for women and girl survivors of domestic violence and abuse. For assistance, contact 021 761 7585. South African Depression and Anxiety Group A 24-hour helpline is available if you need counseling for depression or anxiety. Contact 0800 456 789 or SMS 31293. Food for COVID-19. The National Association of Child Care Workers is distributing food parcels to vulnerable families and children. If you are able to donate or need help, contact 082 418 7918 or 082 5509 465. Solomon's Havens help feed 500 elderly people, children and homeless people in the Cape Flats. To donate, contact Hanif on 083 485 7921. Reminder to our audience members who are SASSA beneficiaries. The South African Social Security Agency has changed payment structures from May. Social grants will be paid 3 days later than usual for pensioners and people with disabilities and 5 days later for other grants recipients. This will see beneficiaries receiving payments from the 4th and the 6th each month.
Greetings. My name is Totsi Memela, your SASSA CEO. Our grant payment dates have changed. Disability and older persons grants will be paid on the 4th and the 5th of May 2020. Any grants linked to those accounts will be available on the same dates. All other grants will be paid from the 6th of May 2020. Note that your money will still be available after the payment date. This is our contribution to maintaining social distance and protecting the vulnerable from congestions at access points. Wash your hands regularly and keep that 1 meter distance. SASSA cares.
That's all we have for you today, but if you have something to say, we want to hear from you. Send your comments, news and questions to us via Facebook at Our City CT, on Twitter at Our City CT, or get in touch with us via email on ourcity@capetowntv.org. This is a time that we need to come together as a nation. So if you're not sure about something, send us your questions and we'll try to find the answers for you. You can also call us on 021 448 0448. From me, Michaela Miller and Octavian Glover, goodbye.